was 1999, and the phone rang. And it was my then fiancée. And it was nothing unusual because she'd ring me all the time. But when I picked up the phone and spoke to her, there was something a little bit different in her voice. And she invited me round. So I went in the evening round to her house. And I remember walking in through the front door and into the front room. And there she was sat over here on the sofa. And her parents sat opposite her, looking glum-faced. And you know when you walk into a room and you just know something's not quite right. Well, as it turned out, she decided 5 weeks before the wedding that she didn't love me anymore. She decided she didn't want to get married. What it later translated into was I'm sleeping with somebody else, but I just don't have the balls to tell you in front of my parents. But that's a different story. And so off I went with this sob story, heartbroken, walked out of the house. In actual fact, I could pretty much see it coming. I'd known for some time that something wasn't quite right in the relationship, and actually it didn't surprise me when it worked out that way. So off I went. I thought, that's it, made a place to myself. I hate women. I will never get involved with a woman again. Famous last words and all that. And I booked myself a holiday to New York with two of my best buddies, and I thought, I'll go to New York, do a bit of a road trip. Not quite like The Hangover, but almost like The Hangover. Do a road trip with my two buddies. We'll go to New York and have some fun, and I'll check out the New York ladies. Now, I should give you a bit of background. My dad was one of the first greengrocers in the Birmingham area that specialised in importing Indian spices direct from India. He used to bring over pickles and spices direct from India. And because we were one of the first over here, we had a huge following of customers. So much so that my dad had this exponential network of people that he just knew. In fact, if he ever got into network marketing, he would make an absolute fortune from the people that he knew. And so what happened was, once word got around the gossip channels, I'm sure it exists in every culture, something happens in minutes, people know, the phone started to ring at home. From well-intentioned relatives trying to resell me into other families.
To the highest bidder.
To the highest bidder. It wasn't quite the closed envelope process, because that would have done my ego loads of good. But they were trying to resell me into other families. Well-intentioned uncles and aunties ringing up and saying, we know somebody, we know a really nice girl and stuff like that. And one of my uncles, or my dad's uncle, was really insistent, and he knew this great girl. He said, I've got the perfect partner for dinner. She's a lovely girl, she's from Leicester, and you should go and meet her. Now, this was the kind of, and the meeting date was set for the Friday before I was flying out to New York, and I had no interest in going to see her. None. I mean, I was looking forward to getting out to New York and having some fun out there, and the last thing I wanted to do was go and see this random girl that some uncle in my family decided that was right for me. And so on the Monday before this Friday meeting, this phone call came through and I was like, no. And then on Tuesday I was like, all right. And then on Tuesday night I was like, no. Wednesday morning I was like, okay. And so on and so forth. And I must have changed my mind during that week 1,000 times. 1,000 times. Until on Thursday, one of my best friends said to me, he said, listen, I said, I don't know what you believe in, but what if she's the one? What if she's the one? I mean, what have you got to lose? You're only going to go and see her, you're going to have a conversation, and you walk away. And if you don't like her, you don't like her. If you like her, well, who knows? She could be the one. And do you know what? I remember driving up to our house and walking through the front door, and I don't know about you, but when I've bought a house in the past, you know how you know it's the right house for you? Mm-hmm. Well, you think about the same thing, but I just knew when I walked into that house, there was something special about this family. I just knew I was going to make a connection that day. In fact, I knew that she was the right one for me before I even met her in person. Isn't that strange? So I just got this feeling when I walked in, and I met her brother and I met her family, and actually something quite funny happened, that her brother's wife was in the room, and I thought that was her. It was a good job, she was very pretty. But my mother-in-law quickly clocked on and she explained all that. But anyway, Gem and I had a conversation for about an hour and 15 minutes. And she still says to this day that was the longest conversation of her life. I thought it went quite quickly, really. I didn't know whether to say that as feedback is a good thing or a bad thing. But an hour and 15 minutes later, we decided that we'd go and see each other a few more times. And we dated for about a year before we decided to get married. And we set the date for the 9th of July 2000. And it was going to be a big occasion because I'm the eldest of 3 boys. I'm the eldest boy, grandson in my family. So, because my dad's network and the people that we knew, and Jem's family's quite big, we had a huge amount of guests at our wedding. I had about 1,000 people on the guest list at my wedding, of which I personally knew 3. It's kind of like 4N really, isn't it? not to the room, through the room. So it's 1,000 people at my wedding, and all the stuff was going on, and I've done it. How many of you have been to an Indian wedding or ever seen an Indian wedding before?
Yeah.
3-day affair, starts on Thursday, lots of colour, lots of family round, lots of rituals and stuff to go through, and this was going Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Because I was special, I had an extra day. I had actually 4 days to do it, not the usual 3 days, and the wedding was scheduled for Sunday. So the 8th of July, I went to bed with a big smile on my face thinking, tomorrow, it's the big day. And I got up the next morning, washed my face, brushed my teeth, and I heard a shout from my dad from his bedroom. And I turned and went into the room, and I looked at my mum, and she was lying on the bed, covered from head to toe in a rash. Not just any rash, the kind of rash that's connected to meningitis.
Oh my God.
And her eyes couldn't focus, and she was being violently sick. So we dialed 999. Paramedics turned up and said, we don't know what it is actually, it could be chicken pox, it could be measles, we're not quite sure. But my younger brother was at university that year and had given us some leaflets about meningitis, and I think I knew inside that this didn't look good. However, took the advice of the paramedics and they said they'd take her in. So they took her in for a battery of tests and said that she'd be right as rain and she might come out and it'd be okay. And I should carry on to the wedding. So I did.